So here we go. Oh, great. So hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us on this holiday weekend. So I know that people have a lot of stuff to do, and so thanks for taking the time to come to this empathy circle. So I'm Edwin Rutch, hi, Megan. I'm Edwin Rutch, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and this is the beginning of a series of empathy circles that we're doing to bridge the political and social divides. So we're just getting started with this. We've done a series of maybe 10 of them so far, and we want to ramp it up to really to have hundreds and thousands of these going around the country and the world, and to also to have people be trained to be able to facilitate them themselves. And so our goal is really to build a culture of empathy, which means for everyone to be heard and seen and acknowledged to their satisfaction, and for us to really see our common humanity across the political divides. And to get the ball rolling, we just want to introduce ourselves. Your name, just a short introduction, your name, where you're located, as well as maybe your political affiliation identification. So I can model that. I'm Edwin Rutch, Director of the Center for Building a Culture of Empathy, and I live in El Cerrito, which is near Berkeley. And my political affiliation is I had grown up conservative, moved to the liberal side, progressive side, and am now what I would call on the empathic side. So that's just a quick introduction for me, and maybe I'll just go around and just call on people on the list.
Edwin, so tell me, Edwin, this is Louis Griggs, and I'm in Berkeley, and spend my life in politics and diversity, and I'm one of those weird small d Democrats who loves the intelligence of the far right and the far left and the center, and I hate the righteousness of either. So I'm as far left as you can get on human rights issues, and sometimes as far right as you can get on my MBA education and financial issues. So I never know which lever to pull, but I'm quite a centrist, actually. Now, because you have 9 here, and with Gail 10, maybe I should just let you stay smaller.
Okay.
If I come back over and over and over, I will be back again. I love doing this.
Okay, great. Thanks for letting us, checking in. Appreciate that. So
absolutely. Okay. Bye.
Bob, like to?
I'm Bob Brown from Thousand Oaks, California, and I live 4 miles away from the Borderline restaurant that was the site of the killings last month. And I am hoping we can all be better neighbors to each other.
And David?
Yes, my name is David Carson, and I live in San Francisco. And for all intents and purposes, I identify on the right. Right.
Okay. And Ben?
My name is Ben. I live in Eugene, Oregon, and I'm effectively left.
Okay. Chris? Oh, you're muted.
I'm Chris Hartstein. I live in Baltimore, Maryland. I have a lot of involvement with nonviolent communication. Politically, I think I would call myself a centrist. I liked the way the other introduction went. I just really like facts and logic and the fullness of a picture. And I really don't like labels and name calling.
Evan?
Hi, I'm Evan McGore. I'm from Long Island, New York, and I've grown up liberal and kind of just discovering the sort of empathy, needs-based approach as I go.
And Megan? Thanks. Megan?
Hi, Megan. I'm from Chico, California, although I'm currently actually in Buenos Aires, Argentina. And I would say grew up more on the liberal side of things, and I consider myself an anarchist, but also, empathy. And I was thinking the other day, like ominous or like omnipartial is a word that comes from restorative justice. It's like I want to be on everyone's side.
Okay, Bill?
I'm Bill Filler, a retired special education teacher. I'm here in Richmond, California. I would identify, mostly, as I said last week, on the left, but it's complicated.
Gail?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'm Gail, and I live in Fairfax, California. It's a small town in Marin County, and I would label myself as progressive and humanist, and that's why I'm interested in these empathy circles. And I see David going like this.
Quicken up, don't mind.
Okay.
Okay, well, great. So I wanted to introduce just how we do the empathy circle. And so empathy circles are usually in smaller groups of 4 to 5 participants. We're going to be dividing into 2 groups. And in the process, one person will be the speaker, and they select who they're going to speak to. So if I was speaking, if I was the speaker, I would select someone to speak to, perhaps David. I can share what it is I'd like to say, and then the listener would reflect back their understanding of what it is that I said to my satisfaction. And then we're going to have 5-minute time speaking. You can speak up to 5 minutes. And once your time is up or you've felt heard to your satisfaction, it's then the listener's turn to become the speaker, and they select who they're going to speak to. And that listener reflects back. We just go around for the time allotted, and we'll, once we break into our groups, we'll go until 12 Pacific, 15 minutes before, and then we'll come back into the group. And so some tips for the speaker is, so the first thing you do as a speaker is you select who it is who you'd like to be your listener. And then it's good to kind of share the attention around, but you as the speaker have your choice of who you want to speak to. So it's ultimately your choice who you select. You want to pause often as the speaker to give the listener a chance to reflect back what you have to say, because it can become a lot if you're speaking and the listener won't be able to kind of hold it all. And then once you speak, the listener will reflect back their understanding, and then you kind of check, is it accurate? Did they really understand you? If they did, you say, okay, then you just continue on. If they didn't, you can restate what it is you said, maybe in other words, until you feel heard to your satisfaction, heard and understood. So it's really about you feeling like you're understood to your satisfaction. And when you're completely done or the time is up, you can say, I feel fully heard, and that just indicates that you're done, and then it's the listener's turn to speak. For the listener, what you're trying to do is reflect back your understanding of what the speaker has said. You can do it in your own words, kind of get it reflecting the essence of what they said. And you're wanting to refrain from asking questions or commenting or putting your own stuff into the reflection. You're wanting to just share your understanding of what the person has said, because you're sort of trying to support them and accompany them sort of on their journey. And if the speaker asks a question, you don't answer the question, you just reflect back your understanding. What the question is, you just reflect back what their question is, you don't answer it. Then when it's your turn to speak, you can answer the question if you want. So hopefully you had you saw this, the instructions online, and so that's clear enough. And if you're a silent listener, eventually your turn will be, you'll have your chance to speak. So let's see, the next thing we want to do here is, how many people do we have? We have 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So we need to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So yeah, Bob, you're muted.
You're muted.
Hello, Corey.
Oh, we have a new person, Corey.
Hi.
Okay, would you like to just introduce yourself real quick, your name, where you're located, and maybe political identity, if any?
My name's Corey. I like he or they pronouns. I live in Chico, California, but I've lived in different parts on the West Coast, and I was raised in Connecticut. I was raised very conservative and right-wing, and as I grew older, I sort of moved further and further left.
Okay, well, that's good. That'll do. Thank you. So I'm thinking, let's see, how many? Bob, would you be the facilitator of one of the rooms?
Sure, I'll give it a shot.
Okay, and move to 2. So I'm just gonna have to create these rooms. Evan, David, Chris, Corey, and let me just move you. Oops. I think next time we're gonna have 2 people be facilitators so that this can be done in the background. 1, 2, 3, 4. Move to, okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, we're gonna go into our rooms now. So, oh, sorry. Okay, so we're going to break into rooms. In the second room, Bob, you'll be the facilitator. We're going to go to a quarter till 12 Pacific, and then we'll come back into this room to debrief. And our topic is how might we bridge the growing social and political divides. And we'll give 5-minute turns, and you'll be timekeeper as well.
Okay.
Bob, okay. So here we go. Okay, hopefully this is gonna work. You've been invited to a breakout room. Yay. Hello? Oh, how did this? Megan, are you there?
This and probably lay back down.
Okay, yeah, I'm back. Okay, sorry for that. Just next time I think I'm gonna have somebody facilitate and then one person do all the nuts and bolts here.
I usually have a webmaster to handle all those details.
Yeah, I'm gonna do that next time. So, okay, we can get started then with Evan, could you keep time for us? You have a clock there,
Sure.
5-minute rounds. So we can get started. Whoever would like to speak on the topic, maybe speak to me first to just get the ball rolling and I can demonstrate. Who would like to, just on the topic, or anything you want to talk about too. It's totally open to whatever you like to talk about as well. It's alive for you.
I could start it out if you want.
Sure.
So is it going to be me talking to you, Edwin?
Yeah, just to demonstrate.
Okay. What's up, Edwin? My name is David. Like I said, for all intents and purposes, I identify as on the right. And I've done a few of these, and Yeah, here I am.
Mm-hmm.
As far as bridging the political divides, I'm at the point now where I'm not sure if that's possible, but I still like participating in these things and hearing perhaps some new ideas.
Okay, let me reflect that back then. So you've done several of these, and it sounds like you're a little discouraged with being able to bridge the political divides. You're seeing that as less and less possible.
Yeah, I feel heard.
Is there more?
Yeah, part of that discouragement is past couple weeks I've read that book, Saul Alinsky's book, Rules for Radicals. And I'm not sure if you're familiar with that book, but it's basically the radical left's handbook. And after reading that, I'm pretty discouraged that they don't respect dialogue whatsoever. They don't even respect it at all. So what's the point?
Mm-hmm. So from the Saul Alinsky book, reading the strategies for the left, that you're seeing that at the core they don't value dialogue, and you're just feeling if they're not valuing dialogue, what's the point, really?
Yes, I feel heard.
Is there more?
That's all for now.
Okay, then I'll speak to Evan. So I feel pretty optimistic, for bridging the political divide. I've been doing this for a while, and I think with training, and it's doable. So if you want to reflect that back.
Yeah, sounds like you've been feeling optimistic about bridging the political divide, and with your experience, you feel like with training, it's definitely possible.
Yeah, I think it needs to be ramped up, though. It needs to be more assertive, like the dialogue. Us who value dialogue need to be more assertive. So one way of doing that, I've been thinking, is holding like a rally in Sacramento at the state capitol, and doing a sort of a demonstration, maybe even an occupation, to say that we want the legislators and maybe the governor and kind of the executive branch to hold empathy circles with each other, across the left and right, to model it at the sort of the political level, and make an issue of it. Actually set up the empathy tent there in Sacramento and say we're not leaving until you have these dialogues. So.
Yeah, so it sounds like you're saying you think that the next step is to be more assertive about the dialogue, and even hold a demonstration in Sacramento and the state capitol, and say something like we're not leaving until the legislature participates in an empathy circle.
Exactly, that the left and the right, we want two from each side to come together and take part in recorded empathy circles, and then we would broadcast those and make it an issue. It's exactly what David is saying, this aspect of the left not being willing to dialogue with the right. I mean, I've been pretty upset about that in Berkeley when it happened. It's like I reached out to the right when they had rallies here, and the leaders said they would do empathy circles. The left would not dialogue. So, or the activists, the sort of the hard left, would not dialogue. And for me, that was a shock, as someone who, saw myself as on the left and, into dialogue, and that everybody's voice matters.
Yeah, so it sounds like you share that frustration with David about, not being able to see a dialogue possible. And you even reached out to the activists on the left, and they just weren't willing, but the right was. And it's just kind of frustrating.
And I've already created the event for Sacramento for May. So I've created the event for the rally, And I'm just putting it out there to start thinking about it and sort of brainstorming around it. And I hope David will join us.
Well, if I have time, I'm not sure what my. Oh, sorry, it's not my turn.
Yeah, so it sounds like you've already created the event for May, and you're hoping people will join.
David.
And David will join, yeah.
I feel heard.
Okay, cool. Let me stop my clock here. I gotta do this for myself. Okay, my clock is starting. No pressure. I'll speak to Corey. Cool. I've done a few circles now, and I've expressed a lot of my thoughts. And right now I'm feeling unsure of where to go. Maybe I'll pause there.
Sounds like you're feeling unsure where to go now that you've participated in quite a few of these circles and expressed a lot of your thoughts already.
Yeah. I guess I'll try to go off of what David said about just kind of feeling hopeless about there being dialogue. I'm fascinated to hear that that David read this book. It sounds like it was a really depressing journey, and I can't imagine having the motivation to read that book. But yeah, I hope that David doesn't lose hope. Maybe I'll pause there.
It sounds like you're feeling some shared experience with David and feeling hopeless about dialogue and that people aren't talking to each other. And you're impressed and maybe even feeling a little bit hopeful that around David relating that he read this book, and I feel like there was something else in there.
Yeah, I can say again kind of the meat of it, which is basically that it's not so much that I have a shared experience with David. I have trouble relating to reading something so depressing and getting through something like that, and curious about the motivation.
Now the shared experience was around like feeling kind of hopeless about the dialogue, but it's you're having trouble relating to reading something that seems so depressing, or like reading a weighty work that is not something that you consider that relates to your worldview, and you're kind of impressed that someone would walk themselves through that experience.
Right, exactly. And I guess I'll share one more thought, which is that I feel like to some extent we already knew that radicals are not willing to dialogue. Maybe that's part of being a radical. So I never put my hope in radicalism in the first place. And I'm curious to hear if David feels like expanding on that or piggybacking off of that later on.
So you're saying that you never felt you have some feelings about the radicals, as you put it, not wanting to dialogue, and you're wondering if maybe that's just part of what makes them radicals, is that, and you're definitely feeling separation from these people that are under this, that we perceive as being under this label. And I'm sorry, it's a little bit.
Do you want me to say again, or?
Just say that last bit one more time. I'm trying not to get distracted by some of the language you're using and just focus on what you're saying.
Yeah, that's okay. So now I forgot what I was saying. Just that I never put hope in radicalism in the first place.
You never put hope in radicalism in the first place.
Awesome. I feel fully heard. Thank you. So now it's your turn to select someone.
Chris Hartstein? Chris? Is it Chris? It just says Chris Hartstein, so it's not. And I wasn't here for the first round of introductions.
Yep, Chris Hartstein. I'm going to move my location because I value privacy. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, and I kind of wanted to apologize to the group. I spoke something a minute ago, and I thought I had shut my video off, and I hope it wasn't distracting to anyone. But, okay. So I didn't participate. I listened after the fact to one of the earlier empathy circles. It included Edwin and David and a couple of other people. And I was not hopeful after watching that at all. And I feel really sad. Not just about, I feel sad about about the sort of classification of people. I feel sad that when people think of a large and not solidly defined group as a monolith, like when David said that the Radical Left Handbook by Saul Alinsky was basically the handbook of the radical left, I felt completely invisible and such a spike of frustration, as I always do when someone defines such a large group with no black and white borders in such a narrow way. And I feel like my view and experience of the world is being narrowed, and I feel fear about how I'm describing myself, that people and which box people are going to put me in based on how I describe myself. That's a lot of.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, it was a lot. Okay. Corey, I heard that you listened after the fact to one of the empathy circles, and you're feeling discouraged and hopeless after listening there, and that you're feeling really sad now, and frustrated. In particular, comment that you heard David make in reference to a book that he referenced, that manual for the radical left, and that your sadness is largely about people being categorized and large groups of people being seen, under one lens or in one box, and brings up fear for you and how you will be perceived, and if you will be put in one of those boxes, or which one you might be put into. Did I get most of what you said?
Yeah, I think it was. Yeah, I think I feel, and I want to just go like a little bit harder on that feeling, like that fear of how I'm categorized, like, and it's less about who I am and more about the other person's experience, and having broad assumptions made about who I am based on someone else's knowledge or experience or trauma or any of that. And that ends, and I'm sad that ends a potentially rich discussion before it even has a chance to begin.
Okay, so particularly you're concerned about how you will be perceived and what category you'll be put in, and the sadness comes from a conversation ending, the richness of a conversation not even being able to be entered into because of that person's experience with something dramatic in someone other than yourself's experience.
Yes, being categorized based on someone else's experience, not based on how I choose to categorize myself. I feel like I'm afraid of not having choice about not being able to make the choice of how I'm perceived and interacted with.
Yeah.
And I feel sad that choice, that I feel sad. Yeah. Fear. And I think, thank you for your listening and your empathy with this. Thank you. I feel heard. And it's a gift.
Yes, thank you. So I guess I pick Edwin.
Okay.
Much better.
This is my first time in an empathy circle ever, so it's like my heart's racing, and my daughter's home from college, and she's listening, and I'm like, oh, can I really do this? No.
So it's the first time you've been in an empathy circle, so maybe feeling a bit of anxiety about it, as well as someone else is listening, so you've got that kind of distracting you, and so just a little bit of feeling a little bit of anxiety about it all.
Yeah, definitely. But just that little interaction with Corey just like opens my heart to just the simple reflection and being heard piece is really, really important. So I mentioned before that I do a lot with nonviolent communication. That's where most of my experience is, in dialoguing with people and hearing people at a different, at the level of empathy. And so part of, it's like, well, why the hell, why aren't we able to just have these red, blue, purple, whatever? It's so frustrating to me that the only time I see this kind of engagement is either with your face attached to it or in an NBC world. And then when the regular and Facebook world, I just hear people just saying, I've left Facebook, I can't handle it, I dropped people because after Sandy Hook I just couldn't hear those comments, or after this I just couldn't stand it. And united we stand, and just united we stand, but apparently united we don't talk. So really, really frustrating. And a lot of sadness, and I'm sensing that I need to slow down because it is helpful to have smaller chunks.
So feeling sadness and frustration, just that there's not more dialogue happening. And in terms of you feeling anxious, being able to reflect Corey, what was just being empathically reflecting her, sounded like that was sort of grounding for you as well. And you're maybe just wondering, it's like, why is there not more of this dialogue out out in the world. It's like almost can't even understand it. It seems like, of course we would do this. So just frustration about that. And
Yeah. Yeah, and I guess I have to emphasize the nonviolent communication piece, since I'm like passionately, if you see me not looking at the screen, it's because I'm sewing these dolls and these empathy dolls, and I've read, in this children's book, and I'm like, forget the adults, let's just go for the kids. It's just really, really important to me. And my level of sadness, despair, and hopelessness is, and I might get emotional. Not seeing that blossom in the way that I wanted to see it blossom over this last 5 years.
So some real grief and sadness about the lack of connection and people not really connecting with each other, and maybe even a hopelessness with adults. Maybe there's just some hope with children, and maybe supporting children with dolls and empathy dolls in other ways. Maybe that there's some hope there.
Yeah. I feel heard.
Okay. Thank you. Then I'll speak to David.
Okay.
Yeah. So, I'm hearing a lot of grief and hopelessness.
I guess I started it out like that, huh?
If you want to just reflect what I was saying.
You said sorry for responding like that. I'll jump script from time to time, but to reflect what you were saying, you sense a lot of grief and hopelessness.
Yeah. I feel a lot of hope in terms of the work I'm doing, because I think it's all doable. It's creating this dialogue, and I actually have some fun with it too. It's like there's some enjoyment. It's like I go out and listen to the right at these rallies, listen to the right, listen to the left, and I kind of enjoy the interchange and the dialogue that I have by being sort of being a empathy activist.
You said that you are enjoying yourself, getting out there, talking to the left and right, and just participating in this empathy activist type activity altogether.
Yeah, and what comes to mind is just the enjoyment of we went to that right-wing rally in Sacramento, and set up the empathy tent, at the state capitol, and you were there. So we had this connection, online, but then we met in person, and it was really nice to, meet you personally and just have you sit in the tent and talk with you.
You said you went to the Sacramento rally and you ran into me, and you had an empathy tent there, and that I hung out for a bit, and that you had a good time with that.
Yeah, and there was some other conservatives who came into the tent, and I was just impressed with how you were able to explain to them how to do an empathy circle. Usually I'm trying to explain it, and there you were explaining how to do an empathy circle to, some right-wing, participants there at the rally. So that was like a real treat to say, wow, he's really got it. He's really able to explain this, really, clearly. And so I was quite tickled with that.
You were impressed with my ability to explain the empathy process to other right-wingers while at the rally at Sacramento. Yeah,
exactly. And so it's hard work. It's like, it's hard, it's tough. It's like, and again, there's something about this, this needing to be more assertive in our empathy work. It's like, can't you say, oh, please, America, please, or the world, be more empathic. It just doesn't seem to be working. It's like somehow this activism of getting doing our own event, like at the state capitol, is kind of where I'm kind of getting towards. Is we have to the people who value dialogue have to be assertive in asserting for dialogue to happen. Just as the radicals are assertive in having dialogue not happen, and just fighting.
Okay. The first part was a little fuzzy, but you were basically emphasizing on using the tactic of assertiveness to try to promote the empathy process.
Yeah, I think that's the core. Is I'm trying to have that sense of assertiveness to, like doing an Occupy empathy at the state capitol and saying we're not leaving until every representative has had an empathy circle with someone across the aisle, and make it an issue, and then get publicity for it and see if we can sort of rally people around that. So it's a space for people who value dialogue. Instead of being hopeless, it's like people are taking some kind of an action, and I think the action gives hope too.
You said that you think you'll get more results by being more assertive, perhaps having a sit-in in Sacramento demanding that representatives sit down for an empathy circle, and you feel like that is the best way forward.
Yeah, and then, for example, we did an empathy circle at UC Berkeley with Joey Gibson, right-wing leader, and
where? Sorry,
it's at UC Berkeley when there was a rally there, and bam, bam! By any means, this time. Is that my time, or is that 2 minutes? Oh.
It was 5 minutes.
Okay, then I'll
just reflect back what you just said.
Yeah,
and just ended on that.
Yeah,
you said that you did an empathy circle with Joey Gibson and BAM last year.
Not BAM, but BAM shut it down. Tried to shut it down. That was so. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I didn't see that. I saw something else. Anyway, so it's my turn.
Yep.
I guess I'll pick Evan. All right. I guess to start off is I just want to express that I can be a moody person, so I'm the one that started off the conversation. Sorry if I depressed everyone. That's just where I'm at this point for various reasons I'll get into.
So you're saying that you can be a moody person sometimes, and you feel sorry if you depressed people out with the way that you opened it up.
Okay, I feel hurt. I also would like to say that it wasn't hard so much because I listen to audiobooks. So it's a little different than sitting down and like reading it, and hearing the stuff in your own voice. I find that a lot easier to have someone else read it, because then it's just like I'm just hearing another person. And also I get headaches when I read too much. So it wasn't that hard to open, with audiobooks. And I would maybe suggest the same for you if you want to listen to something you normally wouldn't read.
Yeah, so you're kind of painting the picture that it wasn't a book that you were reading necessarily, like it wasn't the like a hardcover book.
Yeah.
But it was an audio book that you were listening to, and that you're sort of saying how when you read sometimes that can give you a headache, and it's much easier to do an audio book. So it's not like you were sort of painting through like a reading, like an active reading kind of thing. You were listening to it, and you're recommending that sort of method of absorbing information.
Okay, I feel hurt. And the reason I felt like bringing this up is because I've heard this book referenced a lot, so I decided to check it out. And it really is, from what I've seen through demonstrations and reflecting on just the history of the last 40 years, that really is the handbook of like radical progressives.
So you're saying how that book really is the handbook for radical progressives after everything you've seen over the last 4 years.
Yeah, well, yeah. Okay. I feel hurt for the most part. And in that book, it puts great emphasis on classifying the world as the has and the has-nots, basically. That's how it and it promotes polarizing that, because then it's because it's best to have a clear-cut enemy.
Yeah, so you're saying how the book divides people into the has and the has-nots, and it's promoting polarization, and you think that is a sort of a way of putting a clear-cut enemy for people.
Yeah, I feel heard. And that's basically, I've been apolitical most of my life. I think people are just impossible generally most of my life. I just rather not deal with them. But I felt a need to get involved because I live in the Bay Area, and seeing a lot of the violence being used mainly by the left to shut down rallies here.
You're saying you've been apolitical most of your life, but you recently felt a need to get involved because of the violence that you saw in the Bay Area from the left, mostly.
Yes, and I think this is a playbook directly out of that, book. And that book basically is only thing that matters is doing whatever you can to get what you want. And that's the attitude I've kind of seen from people. And I think that's I don't know, I just think that's bad, because if everyone's like that, it's just all out war.
So you're saying how the violence that you've been seeing is a play out of that book, and it's kind of this attitude or method of do whatever it takes to get what you want. And you're worried because if everyone does that, then this gesture is kind of like then everything goes to shit.
Pretty much, yes. I feel hurt. What was I going to say? Like, there's always going to be a status quo. Like the people who are fighting the status quo are actually the status quo in the Bay Area now, and they cannot handle even small right-wing rallies because they know the power of people bucking the system. They want their status quo that they developed by destroying the old status quo to stay in place. It's a never-ending cycle.
So the status quo, and I'm also holding up the phone, is I'm sorry?
How much time do I have?
It's past 5 minutes now, but I'm happy to reflect that back to cap it off.
Mm-hmm.
So you're saying how the status quo is people who are trying to break the status quo or the previous one, and that it's just like this never-ending cycle?
Well, basically, the status quo that we have here in the Bay Area, for example, became the status quo by fighting the old status quo. And they do not want the same they don't want anyone to have a platform because they're afraid of losing it, like they caused the old status quo to dissolve back in the 60s.
I see. Okay, so you're saying how basically the left has the status quo in the Bay Area, and they don't even want even small right-wing rallies because they just want to keep their status quo, basically.
Yes, I feel hurt.
Okay, cool. Thanks. Let me just reset my timer for myself. I'll speak to Corey. I was thinking about what you said earlier about not wanting labels or sort of labels, being worried about labels, sort of ending a chance for a rich discussion. And I was thinking about how you're feeling invisible, maybe related to labels. And I also share a dislike for labels. Maybe I'll pause there.
You're muted, Corey.
Hi. It sounds like you resonated with something I said about feeling invisibilized by very broad labels. And you share a distaste for you don't like being labeled and being placed in a category.
Yeah. And I guess maybe what we were doing, a lot of us in the beginning were talking about radical leftists, but we haven't really defined who we're talking about. So in a sense, we're using a label without really defining it. So I'd be curious to spend some time there, if anyone else wants to spend some time there today in this discussion, to define what radicalism is. And maybe it's hard not to use labels, to completely abandon them in our common way of speaking, but maybe defining it will help as we keep using the word.
Let me see here. You're you keep hearing this term, the radical or radical leftist, radicalism, and so you're not really feeling sure like what that means, and like it's hard to really abandon the use of labels, because for sorry, I'm about to put my own spin on why it's hard to abandon labels, but even within using labels where you're not sure that everyone really that everyone's really using the same words to mean the same things.
Yeah, basically. And I can start, I guess, since I'm putting forward the idea, by maybe suggesting that we could define radicalism as when people abandon the idea of mutual discourse and negotiation. So it's more about achieving submission over another group and sort of abandoning their needs.
So I think what I missed reflecting back to you the first time was your curiosity. You're feeling curious about the use of the word radicalism, and you have a sort of a definition that you're proposing for radicalism, radical as really being about trying to achieve a power over structure rather than being willing to listen and talk, which are not really. Wait, that's not really. Anyway, you're I'm sort of, if you realize I'm putting my own spin on this, but you're the heart of it is that you're curious as to how other people are using radical, and you're saying that this is how you think of it, and you're desiring that everyone be using it to mean some more or less the same thing.
Yeah, or and I'm just open to multiple definitions. How whatever definition we can mutually share, or a whole set of them. But yeah, you don't need to reflect that. I feel fully heard. Thank you. I'm past my time now a little bit.
Okay.
Oh, actually, I have a question about time, if you don't mind me interjecting.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
Am I supposed to stop it when the person's reflecting, or I just keep it going through the whole thing?
It's a full 5 minutes, including reflection.
Okay, cool.
I'd like to talk to David.
I'm here.
there's quite a few things that you say that when I hear them, I feel a sense of rage.
You said that there's a lot of things that I say that you feel that it's coming from from a place of rage.
No, I said that there are certain things that you say, and when I hear them, I feel rage.
Okay. There's a lot of things that I say that make you feel rage.
And I also identify with you I resonate with your experience of looking across the aisle and feeling hopeless and feeling depressed at attempts to polarize and draw clear lines between people.
You relate with me looking with. You relate with looking across the aisle, and something about polarization. That wasn't really clear. Could you repeat that?
Yeah. So you spoke about reading this book and seeing like positions being polarized, like people wanting people to be on one side or the other of a very clear line.
Yeah.
And feeling some really negative feelings about that, about the clearly wanting people to be on one or the other side of a hard line, if I understood correctly.
So you were repeating what I just said. What I said earlier about me reading this book and it promoting the idea of polarizing people, so you can easily classify one from the other and have I'm adding to this, having a clear-cut enemy, so to speak. And okay, so I'm going to try to piece together what you're trying to say before that. That you share my depression or frustration hearing about that.
Yes. At the same time, I feel that there are, how do I put this? One second, please. Sorry, some noise started up in another part of the house and I didn't want it to interfere. It's just, I see, I think it's very difficult to dialogue with people who seem to have such a completely different basis for their morality. I think that it's hard. I feel really, as much as I want dialogue, I find it very difficult to empathize with people who don't think who don't recognize the existence of racism or sexism or deliberate machinations of class and class structure and class privilege. I find it very difficult to, as much as I want people to hear and hear each other, I feel it's very difficult to even have dialogue when it seems like we have our people are placing. It feels very difficult to have empathy for someone who is with someone who seems to place a ranked value on human life. I'll stop there.
You said that it's hard to empathize with someone with incredibly different points of view than you, essentially, is what you said. You went on to list a lot of preconceived ideas about like what you think I believe in or whatever. But that was essentially what you said, was you find it hard to empathize with someone so much different from yourself.
I feel very sad that you are both. That I feel very sad that you are listing what to me are very real concerns. When you put the things that I said under a list of preconceived ideas, I feel like my words are being dismissed, and I also feel sad that you are taking on all that I've said in a really personal way.
You said you're very sad because I summarized what you said into one category, and you thought I should list them all. And you also feel really sad. I forgot the last part. Could you repeat that?
That you're taking on what I've said very personally to yourself.
And you also feel very sad that I seem to be taking it very personal.
And I wanna try and say like what I like, because I'm not quite feeling heard, and I want to say as much as I want.
May I make a suggestion? It might be, just maybe keep it in smaller chunks, because
Okay, yeah, I get a little.
I think we're coming up on time. I'm doing a really bad track of keeping time, but I know we're past 5 minutes.
Okay. I just want to be really heard that I want people to be able to talk to each other, but I find it really hard to hear and empathize with someone who seems to be unaware of power differences or the way human life seems to be ranked by value.
you said that you find it hard to
I
relate.
don't necessarily mean that this person is you. Okay.
Said you find it hard to empathize with someone who doesn't recognize power struggles are going on, and how people are ranked and so forth.
And that I also want to be heard that I really, really value the dialogue, the connections between people.
And you also would like to say that you really value the dialogue and connections with people. So I think that was your turn.
Yeah, it's 5 minutes.
I feel heard. I just really wanted to be heard for a couple of very specific things.
Okay, so you're hurt. Do you feel hurt? You feel hurt.
I do. I feel heard.
All right, so I guess it's my turn.
Mostly.
Mm-hmm. It'll come around.
So let's say it's a little 5 after 11. All right, so I guess I'll talk to you, Corey. Where do I start? What's the best way to start? there's a lot of reasons why I've come to conclusions that I've come to, Corey. And it comes from a lot of life experiences and observations. Oh, could you repeat that?
You've come to the conclusions that you've come to through a lot of life experiences and observations.
Okay. Well heard. Also, I'd like to say that I do not deny that there isn't power structures, that there isn't racism, sexism, etc. But what to do about that, so to speak, is probably where we differ, or where I differ from the left.
That you feel really deeply about the conclusions that you've drawn, it sounds like, and you want to be clear that you're aware, you want to be seen for being aware of power differences, like in race and in gender, and maybe even in class, but you feel like you differ from what's perceived, generally what you perceive as the left, in how to address those problems.
Yes. I mean, keeping things, it's easy to keep things general and safe, and no one likes to, I've heard you talk about not wanting to feel generalized or grouped together in one generic group. And I like to say that's human nature. No one likes to feel that way.
So you heard that me say that I didn't like being generalized and sort of subsumed under the banner of this one group, and you want to say that that's human nature, and no one likes to feel that way, presumably yourself as well.
I feel heard. And to get specific, I see a lot of some things I might say seem to cause rage in you. I have a lot of rage myself, but a lot. And I'm trying to transform it into something productive, and it can be very difficult.
You have a lot of rage. You feel you resonate with the things that someone say causing rage, and you have a lot of rage, and you're trying to channel it into something more productive and less destructive.
Mm-hmm. And I want to get specific for a second. Talking about, you mentioned racism in the world, for example. And I would like to say one thing that particularly gets my goat is being general here, but it seems the left only think white people can be racist.
So when you hear people say that only white people can be racist, you feel a lot of frustration and rage and stress.
That's not exactly what I said.
What do you mean by getting your goat?
Yeah. Well, what I meant was, what I said was, it seems that's the general idea, even if they don't say it or not.
So you're hearing a general sentiment from a large group of people that only white people can be racist, and it's something that you don't agree with, and something that that you have feelings about, that your feelings come up when you hear it, or when you feel like it's undergirding a conversation, even if it's not being said.
Basically, that's what I feel hurt on that. And I would like to say that some of these overarching, highly complicated, very controversial and provocative subjects, such as racism and classism, power structures and stuff, if you're going to take on the subject, fine, but you need to embrace everything and not focus on just one group.
Can you say that again, please?
When talking, I think if people are going to take on very broad topics such as racism, that they need to explore it in all the spectrums and not just focus on how it expressed in one group, but how it manifests in the world with all groups.
So you feel like when someone wants to take a stand on something as controversial and convoluted as racism, they need to have a broader view of how it affects people across the board and not focus on one segment of the population.
Yes. So I got 1 minute.
Oh, sorry. I was doing it just at the 5-minute mark, but I'm also just
No, it's actually
doing a little late. So.
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
So is my turn over?
Basically.
Yeah, that was 5 minutes. It'll come around again.
That's fine. I feel that was my general direction. I feel it was achieved.
I'd like to talk to Edwin, actually.
Okay.
I don't know. I think I'm actually, I'm. I feel like I'm feeling very activated by the dynamics of, you know what? I feel frustrated.
Mm-hmm.
I feel deeply frustrated.
Okay, so hearing you feeling just very frustrated, feeling activated, and just feeling frustrated, very frustrated.
And I'm noticing how the use of language is people are using the same same words to mean very different things, and it's causing a lot of confusion and a lot of difficulty when talking to each other about things that are very important and crucial and even a matter of life and death for so many.
So you're just noticing how words have different meanings, and these topics have life and death importance to people, and just feeling sort of the frustration of how this language is different. I mean, people are using the language differently or the meanings differently.
Yeah, and like when people can use such disparate meanings of the same word, it makes productive dialogue really difficult.
So when there's like different meaning attached to these words, that it's hard to have productive dialogue. So maybe it's like a block to productive dialogue.
And I also see, like, when I see people who I would consider to be who I feel like should be my allies, engaging in intense power over dynamics, I feel frustrated and sad. And when I see people when I see people ignoring power dynamics altogether, I also feel equally frustrated and sad.
So there's you have a feeling of sadness when there's people who have power, or that they ignore the power dynamics, and so just there's just a feeling of sadness around the dynamics of power. I don't know if I quite got that, but
well, I believe that power over, like what you might call a power over dynamic, where the goal is for one person or group to have power over another. I feel sad when I see people that share my political views fighting to be the next ones to have power over. But I also feel sad when I see people denying that one group or individual has, I feel sad when people are when people are trying to have power over others, and I also feel sad when I see people denying that some people have power over others. Like, I feel sad about the whole reality of some people having unconsented, non-consensual power over others.
Mm-hmm. So you feel sad when you see people kind of chasing for power over, and not sort of being aware of their power over, and that they have sort of power over others, and it's not consensual power over. So.
I think I feel heard.
Okay. So then I'll speak with Chris. So I've heard the topic of power over come up, several times here, and for me, that's what the empathy circle is about. Is it helps with the power dynamics in it's sort of that everyone has more or less equal time to speak, and that they can be heard to their satisfaction. So this is a little mini, hopefully, shared power with dynamics here.
Okay. Yeah, for you, the power over is a term, and that in the empathy circle, it's an opportunity to have power with, that everybody has the same amount of time. There's a equality of time, and no one has power over anyone else.
Yeah, and it's not easy. There is these terms. We have different meanings attached to words and terms, and again, that's where the dialogue comes in, because it's like these terms don't have the same meaning, and it takes some time, some exploration to really get a felt experience of what those terms mean to everyone, because they mean different things to different people. It's just the sort of the reality of life.
Right. So everybody has their own definition of power over, and it's not easy to use terms, and you have to know if somebody is even vaguely saying the same thing that you're thinking when you use those terms.
And yeah, I find that by having these dialogues, I start getting a bigger, deeper picture of what people are meaning, and for sort of an integration of these different understandings to happen.
Right. So through the empathy circles and hearing more from people, you can get understand the distinctions and what people are meaning.
Yeah, so I have hope. My hope is the empathy circle itself is something that gives me a hope that if we can have this spread, have the politicians do it, that it's just a gateway. David had said it previously. It's not the answer to everything, but it's a start to to getting the dialogue going. So it's just one tool to kind of get the ball rolling. And there's a lot of other tools out there, but it's a very simple, easy, that anyone can kind of use this structure and process.
Right. So what I hear for you, the empathy circles are doable and easy and give you a lot of hope that, especially in the area of politics, politicians could learn it and demonstrate and get a sense of what each other is talking about when all these terms are flying around.
And also the space is open to anything. So I think David had apologized, like, oh, I brought up this down feeling, right? It's like everything is allowed. Bring the pain, bring the depression, bring the hopelessness, bring the joy. It's like whatever you want to say this is a space to bring it. So it's not a, so-called safe space where you can criticize somebody, call them names, just whatever you want to do. But you got to be willing to reciprocate and hear what the other person has to say. So I guess I just want to make be clear that bring anything into the circle that you want.
Right. So you want empathy circles to be seen as a safe and open space, that there aren't topics that are off the table, and that you can use whatever language and you can say things freely, call a person a name, and all that's required is that you also reciprocate and hear that person.
Yeah, and it can be tough. It can be we're going into nerve-wracking, anxiety-producing kind of opening up, and I feel it myself. I mean, I feel like I've done where I get to the quick. It's like the pain, the anxiety of just human relationship. It all can kind of come out. So it's not easy. It's not all kumbaya. It can be pretty tough and a real struggle.
Yeah. This is it's not easy. It's very, you get emotionally activated yourself just listening. And it's not all kumbaya, not all, smooth.
Yeah, I feel heard. Thank you.
Cool. Ooh, guess I'll talk to Evan. Did I?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So I'm feeling grateful for this interaction, especially, the real interaction and the dialogue and the activation between Corey and David. It gives me hope. Even though beyond the smooth or not smooth, it's not a fight with a bunch of name calling and people running off to their corners and having disconnection. So it just really gives me hope.
Yeah, so you're saying how you're feeling hopeful after seeing the interaction between David and Corey, and that it's just not like, it's a needless violent exchange. It's that there's ideas happening.
Yeah. And it stimulated in me a memory of a session I went to on, baby. And I'm already noticing in my heart, like, oh my gosh, there's the emotional activation just thinking about using this term. I think it was on racism, but, and the term white privilege bandering around. And I did recall being at another and just having this like the frustration that we're going around the circle and we're sharing and people are getting hot and I'm like, we're not talking about the same thing. People aren't talking about the same thing. And I had gone to another one where we started with a definition. We started with, just looking at the definition from a Webster's dictionary, and then everybody just kind of, what is your definition of this word? What do you think of when you think of this word? And coming to some sort of a, group agreement around a definition before we even entered into the discussion, and how powerful and helpful that was.
Yeah, so you're recalling a memory, and you were starting to feel a little activated on going into this word or these words of racism and white privilege, and you were thinking about this memory where you entered into a discussion with multiple people, it sounds like, and before entering the discussion, you actually worked together to come up with look at everyone's different definitions of the word. Maybe the word was racism. I don't know if.
Yeah.
So you looked at the dictionary definition, and then you sort of went around and said, "What's your definition?" and "What's your definition?" and how helpful that was, before even doing the discussion part.
Yeah, thank you. And it made me think too. Some social psychologist using the term the meaning pool, and that we needed to jump into the meaning pool, jump into the pool together, the pool of meaning, before we have these discussions. But I also wanted to just, I don't know, the mentioning of that book, and how just a lot of political stuff and listening to different speakers has been swimming around in my head. I don't know if I have any minutes left. Do I have any minutes?
Anyway, yep, you've got 2 minutes basically.
Okay, so I'll just mention a book that I read that really impacted me a couple of years ago, which was, it was called The New Thought Police. There was some subtext about the radical left's attack on free speech, something by Tammy Bryce. So written by a female and a lesbian, and it just like woke me up to this whole left, so it made me more cautious about that left road I was going down, and where you're in a bubble of your own opinion, the political opinion around you. And so, political correctness and the lack of free speech is really powerfully important to me now.
So you mentioned how some of the things we were talking about reminded you of this term called the meaning pool that you heard, and how that was really interesting to what we're talking about, sort of getting a mutual understanding with people. And then you were saying how you read this book called The New Thought Police, and it sounds like it's warning about being in sort of the bubble of the left, or the left doing basically diminishing free speech, and that it sort of, then you were worried that maybe you were going down the road of the left too much.
Yeah, thank you. I feel heard.
Cool. All right. I'll speak to David.
Okay.
I'll start my time. So I'm really feeling inspired by hearing about Chris talking about coming up with definitions before a discussion. I'll pause there.
You really like Chris's idea on establishing definitions before discussion.
Yeah, that's rad. So I proposed a definition for radicalism earlier, and now we're talking about racism a little bit. So maybe I'll just talk about my experience of what definitions I've seen used for racism. I really just enjoyed definitions, I guess. I don't know, I'm weird like that. I'll pause there.
You've heard the term You were talking earlier about radicalism, and you've heard the term racism being thrown around, so to speak. And you like to talk about what your definition for those terms are.
Close, really close on the last part. I would just want to share my experience of the definitions that I've heard being used, not my definition.
You would like to express some definitions that you've heard being used.
Mm-hmm. So I think the dictionary definition that you'd find if you were to Google racism is that it's the belief that you are that your race is superior over others.
You believe, I mean, you've looked up Google definition, and it says that the definition of racism is one race thinking they're superior over another.
Right. And then there's the use of racism in conversation, sort of the undefined use of the word, where just when I see people typically use it, I feel like they usually mean what would be the Google definition of discrimination or prejudice, usually one or the other.
Okay, you feel you've heard it in conversation, and generally when people use it in conversation, they are using it in place of the word for prejudice or discrimination.
Right, and it's sort of this, since it's undefined, it's basically just going off on context, and then I also put my own meaning into it from what I thought the word meant my whole life, which was that like if a store clerk is like following a black person around a store, it's like then somebody would say, hey, that's racist, that's racist profiling. It's just something where you just have like an idea about someone based on their race. It's sort of like it can be different things based on the context that you use it in, but in general it's always a bad thing, like you're a bad person because you're basically thinking something bad about someone else because of their race. And that's sort of this contexty loose definition for the undefined usage of racism that I see.
That was kind of, let me untangle that for you.
Yeah, sorry. I got lost in my own words a little bit anyways.
It happens, especially with stuff like this, because I'm talking, anyway, there's a reason why you're doing that, and I can explain that later. But from what I understand, what you said is that your own personal relationship with that word and what you relate that with is people basically judging someone else or making a preconceived idea about someone due to their race.
Exactly, yeah. That was a perfect summary of it. And then, so then what I think, not what I think, what I observe usually from people who identify as being on the left is that they're using a different definition than the other two that I mentioned, which is that it's to benefit from a system that gives advantage based on race.
What you've noticed from the left, generally they're using another definition than those two. Could you repeat that for me?
Yep, it's to benefit from a system that gives advantages based on race.
It seems that the left are using a definition is to benefit from a system based on race.
Right. And I'm going over my time here, so by 10 seconds, I'll just put the last thing on this, which is by that definition from the left, everyone that's white is racist. And I think that's where there's conflict between the undefined usage of it and the left definition. I think that's where a lot of the conflict happens.
You feel that a lot of conflict happens is because due to the popular definition from a lot of people on the left, that white people can't help but to be racist.
Right, because they're using a different definition entirely than the way that we've
Yes.
all been using it our whole life.
Because they're using an entirely different definition.
I feel fully heard. Thank you.
Okay, so I've talked to Evan and I've talked to Corey. I haven't talked to Chris. Have I talked to you yet, Chris? No, I don't think so. I'm going to talk to you.
Okay.
Chris. I don't know you. I don't know anyone really. But it's best. It sounds like that you've had some type of red pill experience from reading that book about the thought police.
Okay. You started by saying that you don't know me and that you don't know anyone really. And then you shifted to my experience of reading that book, and you think that I've had a red pill experience by reading it.
Mm-hmm. And I would like to say that I'm generally, some things stay the same with me, but some things keep evolving. It's hard for me to stay, especially idealistically. And when I started this journey, I was a free speech absolutist, that I thought that any reasonable world would be better if people had open dialogue, and that it can cure a lot of ills in society.
Okay, when you started your journey, you were a free speech absolutist, and that you really believed that it was natural that free speech, and if everybody could say what they wanted, that it would cure a lot of ills.
Okay, with that being said, I'm not sure how long this is going to last. Maybe it's because it's fresh in my mind, but I brought that book up, Rules for Radicals, for a reason, because it deeply affected me. I knew it would, but it deeply affected me, and it shifted me a bit. And after essentially seeing the other side not giving a shit about what I say or do, that doesn't matter, for the last 40 years, I'm starting to not give a shit about what they say either. Sorry being negative, that's just where I'm at.
Sure. So yeah, you brought that book up for a reason. You heard it, listened to it, read it, and it deeply affected you. And it gave you a vision of that this group doesn't care what you say, and that for the last 40 years they haven't, or
And I think that respect is a real big thing, and that my side has been deeply disrespected. I mean, we don't claim to have safe spaces and stuff, but it's different. There's a difference between being trolled online and actually being prohibited from gathering in public without like bottles of piss being thrown at you and you being called racist over and over and a Nazi over and over, the point where I don't give a fuck what you think of me. That if I'm racist, then I'm racist and I don't care. I've got friends of all colors, and sorry, that's just where I am. I've done a few of these empathy circles. Let me stop there and let you repeat.
no, good. Yeah, it's hard to follow all of it.
Yeah.
So yeah, you've done a couple of these circles, and you maybe had some experiences where you were not heard and piss was thrown on you. No, or no.
No. Let me start that over again. That I feel like the other side, there's a thing called respect.
Yes. Sorry. Yes. Respect.
And the other side does not have that have that for us, for me at least. And there's a difference between being disrespected online by being mocked or whatever, and actually surrounding people who are trying to gather and calling them Nazi over and over again and attacking them and throwing bottles of piss. And then we're the evil ones.
Right. Okay, so for you, there's a distinction between the kind of what you see. Respect is important to you. Let me just start there. Respect is really important to you.
Yes.
And the level of disrespect in regards to online behavior or trolling or words is very different than in demonstrating in person and having physical things happen, piss being thrown on people, and that is shocking and appalling for you. That you're called that people on your side are called racist over and over again. That yeah.
Can I have one more?
Yeah, you could go. We're almost out of time, so if you want to just continue for another couple of minutes just to finish the time, because as soon as you're done, we'll join the other group.
Okay. I just like to end that just to kind of reflect what Edwin said, that we don't have to just bring good fuzzy feelings to these things, because this isn't a good fuzzy little world that we live in. And I've stated earlier that there's a lot of reasons I am the way I am. I've been through a lot of crap in my life. I've seen a lot of stuff, done a lot of stuff, had a lot of stuff done to me. And there's a reason why I am the way I am.
Yeah. There's a reason you are the way you are. A lot of things have happened in your life, a lot of things that you've done, things that have been done to you. And this isn't a fuzzy world. And you appreciate maybe the being able to bring up things that are more difficult.
Yes, I feel heard.
Okay, we're going to end at 1:15 and then join the other group. And there's always more to say. And we're going to be meeting every Saturday, so you can come next week and continue the dialogue and the sharing and the listening. So I don't want to get us. See, we have. There we go. It's 11:45 according to Google. So I will see. How do we stop the breakout rooms? See, breakout. Oh, there's close all rooms. So we'll be joining the others in a second here. Here we go. Okay. Up there, everybody's coming in. Okay. Is that everyone?